up and listen to the songs.
Hello, and welcome back to Shut Up and Listen to the Songs with me, Ben Wilson, your music geek in podcast form. Yes, all things fun and vinyl. Thanks for joining us again. I take it that you've listened to the previous episode about why I love vinyl so much. I'm not really going to go back and rehash all that ground. But yeah, this episode, I really want to talk about what a sound system is, both technically, a bit aesthetically, a bit personally, and kind of give you a steer if you're a bit undecided about what you would like or what you really want out of a sound system. I saw an article the other week saying about how vinyl is kind of like an elitist hobby. And I just completely disagree with that. I think it's quite accessible. There's affordable equipment and affordable vinyls in lots of places. And so I'm hoping to debunk a lot of the myths and a lot of the misconceptions around the format. Because when we really think about it, the best sound system for whoever my imaginary listener is, you there, hello, the best sound system for you is the one that's most suitable, that's most applicable in regards to your physical space, in regards to how many people you've got around you. If you're in a noisy block of flats, you may want something loud, or you may need to be considerate. How much money you have, obviously, and yeah, how much physical space. So there's always really good options. But the first thing I really want to do, and I feel it's really important to touch upon at this early stage of the series, is to debunk the term audiophile, because you'll see it a lot around the vinyl world, the hi-fi world, and it's just guff basically. If you think about it, audio, sound, file, liker, somebody who likes listening to sound, well, surely that's everybody. But what you see the term applied for is in regards to equipment, and it's basically a highfalutin way of parting people with their money. I really don't get on with it. Not to say that I've never been hooked in by it or thought like, oh yeah, this does sound so much better because it's audiophile quality. But no, in general, I could really do with getting rid of that term audiophile, because it's a complete misnomer. And if you ever see somebody go, oh yeah, this is for an audiophile, just get your heckles up a little bit, or just be slightly, use your critical thinking. And I'll debunk lots of the awful snake oil ridiculous products that you see. But if you ever see the term, kind of have your suspicions raised, use your critical thinking to think, actually, is this going to be better for my listening experience than what I've got already? There was a really useful expression my dad said about audio equipment when I was upgrading my system, and he said, Ben, after a while, all you're doing is you're listening out for imperfections, and that it just takes you away from the music. And he was entirely right. If you've got the basics right, if you've got a good setup and it's set up properly, and you've got good quality records and you're maintaining them well, then yeah, you're getting the enjoyment from the vinyl experience. And you can get caught in this really rubbish, like Faustian upgrade cycle of thinking, oh yeah, sound nirvana is just that next expensive product away. I just need one more thing. I need another gadget, or I need to upgrade this component. And as I say, that's money that's better spent on records, or better enjoying life. You see some, you don't have to go far on the internet to see all the reviews of the super high fidelity products that are engineered magnificently with incredible materials, and they're in such small numbers that they cost a huge amount of money to make them viable. But if you're spending anything north of £1,000 on any component, then it's like, couldn't you use that money better? Could you not put that somewhere more productive in regards to the rest of your life or other people's lives or other things? What do I know? I mean, that's just my opinion. That's my tuppence worth. But yeah, as I say, keep it basic. It can be new, it can be secondhand, which we'll dive into in a bit later.
Shut up! I'll listen to the songs.
Right. So as I say, the best sound system, I could be a hi-fi podcast, which I really don't want to be. There are enough people out there giving their opinions on various products, giving reviews. That's not what I'm here for. What I would say about a hi-fi setup is that the best one for you is the one that's most suitable. It fits your life circumstances best of all. It fits your budget best of all. Maybe with the caveat that a really good one is slightly adaptable and you can slightly future-proof it. What I mean by that is that if you think about where your circumstances are now and where they could be a few years down the line, could you still take your system where you are now and it wouldn't sound, terrible somewhere else, whether that place be bigger or smaller. So I would always keep, kind of two eyes on the present and half an eye on the future, whatever you're thinking of doing. But that's just me. What I'm going to do now is break down a sound system into the three main components or the three types of components to give you an idea of what I mean when I say that the best system is the most applicable one. So what you first of all need to think about are your inputs. So inputs is the first part. If you are like blank paper, your perfect system, you think about what's going into them. The second part is the amplification, the amplifier, the loudness box. And your third part is naturally the outputs, so where the sound is coming from, the speakers, and all of those things. Obviously, I'm here to talk about records and I'm here to talk about vinyl, but for music and the active music listening experience, we've got other physical formats. So your tape player, your CD player, your mini disc player, your your laser disc player. I mean, I'm only kidding. I mean, but some people play music off Blu-rays. That's a big format in the music world. You could have your radio, which could either be a DAB, could be an old school FM AM radio tuner. You can get the internet radio, and obviously, speaking of the internet, you can stream music via the various multitude of apps. Apple Music, Spotify, Deezer, Corbits, I think is how it's pronounced. BBC Sounds, lots of interesting digital web-based platforms. But also, what I would recommend if you're thinking about a sound system and you're thinking about what you want to go into the amplifier, to also maybe consider the possibility of getting your TV or your film system set up. As I say, this is not a hi-fi podcast, and even less, it's a home cinema podcast. But I always find that the biggest lacking in people's home cinema systems isn't the screen, isn't the player, it's the sound quality you get. And so I think if you have a way of hooking up your TV or wherever you watch your movies to your sound system, it's the best way to enhance your movie experience. But I digress massively, unapologetically. But yeah, that's just my tuppence. That if you can also incorporate, whether you've got a DVD player, Blu-ray player, wherever your TV films get streamed from, if you can amplify the sound, bigify it, you'll have a better experience. So then, yes, we move on to the amplifier, the amp, the loudness box. Basically, your amp takes the signal from the source, so whether that's your vinyl player, your CD player, your TV, and it sends it out to the speakers. Sometimes it can adjust the bass or the treble, and sometimes it just takes it and increases the sound. You can get really special ones that connect to Wi-Fi. They can connect to your digital streaming platform. They've got lots of different dedicated inputs. They may just have the speaker wires. They may have HDMI inputs. They may have optical inputs. You can go to town basically with the fanciness of your amplifier. You can also get like what I've got, a AV streamer, an audio visual streamer. So basically, it takes all of the inputs in from your sound and your TV or your Blu-ray DVD player, and it will amplify those while sending the signal back out to the TV. And also within this AV streamer, it's built in to receive the various music streaming services. So I could log in through the AV streamer, and it will send, it will link my account to that. If it sounds like I don't really know what's happening with those AV streamer units, it's because I don't really use them very much. I may do in the future, I may not. We'll see. One really important consideration when we're talking about amplification and when we're talking about vinyls and turntables is that to get the signal from your vinyl player, your turntable, into the amplifier, it actually needs to be boosted in between the record and the stylus and the amplifier itself. The sound that is generated from the needle, from the cartridge, is incredibly small. It's about 2,000th the audio level of a digital source like a CD. And so what needs to happen before it reaches the amplifier is that it needs to have a pre-amplifier. So you will see in the world of vinyl, people talk about preamps a lot. And so sometimes a preamp can be inbuilt into your turntable. Sometimes the preamp can be built into the amp itself, or indeed you can have a standalone preamp where the turntable goes into that and then it goes into your regular amplifier. There's various pros and cons to all of these things. I'm going to give it a broad brush, and as I say, the best option is the one that's most suitable for you. And then in the third part of your sound system, you've got the output, which in most cases, well, in fact, all cases, obviously, it's going to be a speaker or speakers. So, you've got your options of either Bluetooth speakers or you've got wired speakers. You can have left or right, you're going classic stereo. You can have, 5.1 surround with a sound bar. You can do this. Well, you can do lots of fancy things, with your speaker setup. There are lots of other places to discuss all of those things. That's not going to be what we're discussing here. So, as I say, inputs. Think about those. What would you like to listen to? Amplifier. Is it going to do that for you? Is it going to give you a good, nice, loud sound? And thirdly, how are you getting that sound out of the amplifier? You're going to have wired speakers. You're going to go Bluetooth. All those sorts of things to think about. And so, if you imagine your vinyl system or your sound system, you've got the choice of whether getting brand new equipment, which obviously you can get exactly what you want, or you can buy, and you're obviously paying for that because you're the first person to have it, or you're going second hand, which obviously has the benefit in that it should be cheaper. But are you then picking something because it's available? Is it in good condition? All of those sorts of things. And so really all depends upon your circumstances. And to kind of demonstrate what I mean by circumstances, if I just run through some really brief history of my system ownerships, the different ones that I've had over the years, kind of give you a perspective of what's been good for me at that time. And so if we go back to the turn of the century, I got given a tower sound system from my dad. This is one of those late 80s, early 90s black monolithic towers. It was a Sony system. I loved it so much. And when I think about it now, I'm so nostalgic. I know everything 90s is coming back in, but really it was so applicable in a way that I never really knew at the time. And so on the bottom, it had a double tape deck. So you could copy from tape to tape. Then it had the amplifier above that. And so it had the volume knob and it had the different inputs. Above that, it had the radio tuner. These are all kind of like in little modular blocks. And then at the top of it all, it had a turntable. And, you know, it wasn't a high fidelity, super expensive turntable, but it did the job. It did the job really, really well. To get into listening to vinyl, I was lucky enough in that he let me have a run of his records, and there were some classics in there that I just couldn't resist. But the great thing about this unit was that the auxiliary input, which was a basic left or right channel, you could plug anything into that. You could, I plugged in my Discman, so I listened to all of my CDs that I had whilst I was building up my vinyl collection. I had the radio there, so I could still listen to Radio 1. And I had a tape deck, so I could make all of my compilation tapes for my mates of the wonderful new music I was discovering. And this sound system, as I say, I had it at the turn of the century when I started out collecting records. And later on, I took it to university when I had the space for it. And, you know, it started out in my bedroom and then it just migrated down to being the house sound system. It had two medium-sized, decent-sized speakers, and it was just really usable and it was really, really fun. And it was one of those summers of university where I saw in a second-hand listing magazine, the local Friday ad, there was a vintage Bang & Olufsen 70s turntable system, a really small advert for it. Person in the next village over was selling it, and they were selling it for £10. And so straight away, I called this person up, and I'm like, "Oh, have you really got a 70s Bang & Olufsen sound system to sell? Vinyl turntable, amplifier, and speakers?" And the guy goes, "Yep." And I'm like, "Does it work properly?" And he goes, "Yeah, it's pretty decent." And I'm like, "Is it really 10 quid?" And he goes, "Oh, no, there's a mistake there." And I'm like, "Oh, no, that's it. I'm never going to be able to get this like wonderful sound system." He goes, "Yeah, it'd have to be £20." And I'm like, "Brilliant, coming round." And so for years and years and years, I had this wonderful old BO system. If you look them up online, I can't remember the exact number of it, but you had a big combined turntable amplifier. And again, because this had an auxiliary input, I could put in my laptop, whatever I was watching my movies on, you know, just plug it into the mini jack, put the splitter cable goes into the left and right auxiliary inputs, and you can have really good quality sound if you're watching a movie on your laptop. This did me really well for many a year. The only issues with it were, and this is something to consider if you want to go down the vintage hi-fi option, is that it did need quite a lot of repair to it. The speaker cones needed replacing. They weren't cheap. The system needed a good maintenance, so that basically means a qualified engineer to take it all apart, to clean it, to reassemble it, just to make all the motors running. And in fact, actually, it was the motor in the end which died out on me, which was really sad. But another thing to consider, because it didn't happen straight away, but with not only the amount of wear it got, but also through some unfortunate accidents, the stylus needle broke, and these were very specific, very vintage styluses which needed replacing, and they weren't kind of off the shelf parts that you could replace with the modern day one. You had to replace it with a vintage one, which due to the laws of nature, were only decreasing in their availability. So that is the one thing that I would say. If you do want to go vintage, if you do want to go super secondhand and get that really old, beautiful looking machine, you can get a great sound from it. But consider the stylus, consider your cartridge, and can you replace that with a modern one? Because if you can't, then that can be a really critical point of failure. So consider that a lot. And then when this sound system did outlive its life, and I used it for actually a couple of years by buying a new turntable, putting the turntable into a preamp, and putting the preamp into the auxiliary input for this Bang & Olufsen system, because the speakers were still really good, still sounded great. But I bought a new turntable. I went down to Richer Sounds, which I'm not being paid or endorsed to do. I find that every time I go down there, the people, they're really nice, they're really approachable, they're not snobby or condescending, and they're a really good employer in regards to who they recruit, how well they treat them, how they pay their taxes, and all of those things. And so I can hand on heart honestly endorse the advice that I've been given whenever I've gone in there, for whether I've been buying a TV or audio equipment. And so if you do want to go for a new system, you could do a lot worse than going down and just speaking to somebody to kind of see what your options are in regards to your turntable, your amplifier, and your speakers. Okay, so before we wrap up, one last key takeaway that I want to tell you about, which is especially relevant if you're new to vinyl, if you're thinking about getting into vinyl, is that a lot of people will see a suitcase turntable and think, fantastic, that's affordable, that's small, it's portable. And yes, these are lots of really good things. However, there is one really crucial design flaw to these products. And I do kind of categorize them together, because you'll see a lot of the turntable mechanisms. So that's the platter that spins, and also the arm where the cartridge is. They're all it's one part. It's made as a one piece in a factory in China, and you never see that on a real turntable. And so with that cartridge you've got, it's very distinctive because it's quite a long body. It's black on the top and red underneath. And also, because it's made in one piece, the cartridge is kind of tilted at an angle off the tone arm in a way which is very unnatural. And the reason why this design is so bad is two reasons mainly. One is that the stylus, the tip, which is the part that's coming into contact with your records, is usually really low quality. It's quite often a ruby. And secondly, the weighting, so how much force is being exerted down on your record, is quite often much, much higher than what it should be. And those two things, the poor quality needle combined with a big weight on your grooves, is going to really dull and wash out the quality of your records. I've got a 2014 Beatles Red album, which is the early best of. It was analog cut. It should just pop and sing. The sleeve was in good condition. The record didn't have any scratches, and yet when I put it on, I knew straight away that somebody had had this on one of these one-piece mechanisms, because it was just so flat and so lifeless. And to be fair, that probably explains why it was so cheap in the record shop I bought it from, because you only have to have one play with a poor quality stylus, and it will dull and it will ruin the quality of your records. And if you're just starting out, you may listen to it the first time and think, this is amazing. You'll put it on again and you'll be like, this doesn't sound as good the second time. And by the 10th or 20th time, you're like, what's everybody going on about these records? Like, it sounds awful. So that would be the most crucial thing I'd say to anybody considering getting into vinyl. Please, please don't get one of these either suitcase turntables or a really cheap one which has one of these long red cartridges that's connected to the platter. It's just not worth it. So I'm going to wrap it up here because I've heard enough of my voice. I'm sure you have too. But yeah, to wrap up this episode about the what part of Shut Up and Listen to the Songs, we've gone through what sound systems are. They're applicable. They're the best suited system for you. So you've got your inputs, you've got your amplification, and you've got your speakers, and you've got these second-hand versus new root. I hope that's given you all something to think about. And yeah, stick around. Thanks so much for your time. Take care.
Shut up and listen to the songs.